Hello everybody, Thy Lord Root here, and welcome back to another episode of Flight for Survival. So, it's been a while, and I will go into why it has here in a bit, but before we do, we actually need to revisit the contract building, because we have quite a number of outstanding contracts. We have two basic branches that we're going to go for. We're going to leave Duna and Ike alone until we have that window going, which is nice. But aside from that, we also want to put some things around the moon and test that as well. As far as other things that we could test, well, maybe not. The trouble with some of these is that these are not worth science data from carbon. We can do that. This guy, however, is not worth the effort, as it gives us fewer returns. Plant growth in orbit. That might be a good thing to do, actually. That's 60 science. We could use that. Other things aside from that are related to space stations, which I want to get into, but that will have to wait. We'll just fulfill that one contract, and we should have more coming up. But until then, we have the CCP-3, which will take Jeb to Minmus. Now, you do have to be kind of careful with these rockets sometimes. I actually tried to record this, and it became such an ordeal that I decided, I might put it up as a blooper reel, but, it was best to restart at this point. Now, the game state is the same as it was. But basically, what we are going to do is we are going to pick Minmus as a celestial body. And I think about 60 degrees or so, maybe even more. I'm thinking I want to even maybe get closer to... Oh, well that's a bit much. You gotta be careful with these things. But yeah, wait for the rocket to stabilize, and we will get this thing going. Now, I had a number of interesting bugs happen. One happened in which I ended up accidentally switching to orbital mode, which is quite confusing. I was wondering why I could not see my prograde marker, and that turns out to be because if you're in orbital mode, well, it's way over there or whatever. We'll begin pitching over. I'm not going to make an inclination correction just yet. One of the things that I want to do is go on in, at least while I still can, and get ourselves a relatively high periapsis. And by high, I mean higher than what it's at now. Yeah, so we need to point towards that marker over there. And in fact, it may even be possible just to do a straight burn. Although that strongly depends on my ability to fly this rocket correctly. We want to get up to about 30 or so by the time we get on down here. you can see that one of the nice things about this is that it's actually fairly easy for us to increase our inclination at this point. And I'm going to try and get it as high as possible here. Because as it turns out, this upper stage is a bit underpowered. This is what's going to get us to Minmus in the end. And so we can begin pitching over a little bit more, I think. We just want to maintain our relative inclination. Get that as close to zero as possible. Make sure not to overdo it. In fact, at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and pitch over, and even though it's less efficient this way, I am going to pull my prograde vector over just a little bit. And there we go. Make the most of this fuel. And we are off. It would seem as though our inclination is not... I mean, it's actually fairly low. This was a good launch. I could have gotten it better with like a 90-degree angle if I had just waited. But such as it is, there's going to be a limit because we have passed one of the nodes that we really need to be paying attention to. I'm going to go for a low orbit just to make things easier. Because in reality, that's the name of the game. I'm going to bring up my time to apoapsis here. We're about as good as we're going to get on inclination right now. And part of the problem is that our thrust to weight ratio is so tiny in comparison. But we have plenty of delta V. As you can see here, we have more than 2 kilometers per second. This was built in a very almost paranoid sort of fashion. Okay, we need to pull that over just a little bit. Time to apoapsis is increasing very slightly. We may in fact have us in orbit pretty soon. I'm just going to get to, because we're still in atmosphere 80. It seems like a good number, maybe 90. 88, we'll do 88. If we're quick about this, we can correct our relative inclination here, as our apoapsis is several minutes away. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that for the time being. That is still several minutes away. And it's an 18-second burn. So I reckon we'll just speed up a little bit. We should be out of the way of most of the atmosphere by now. I'm going to toggle my gear so that it is available here. It's fairly good for a Minmus launch, though. I mean, one of the issues with doing a Minmus launch, to begin with, is just making sure that you have your inclination right, and we've already brought it down to 2. I'm doing this burn here because it becomes more efficient. But yeah, we should be about where we need to be pretty soon. I'm just going to give myself 15 seconds or thereabout. And jubs should be good. We can start taking stuff here as well, gathering up just a little bit of near carbon science. Because as it turns out, there is an advantage to that. We'll at least leave here with 80 extra science. And in fact, with so much time left to apoapsis, what we can do is we can bring up this surface thing. I know we are missing for the shores, we are missing the crew report, or the EVA report. So we will grab that real quick. And in fact, I'm going to take out the data here from the GravMax, and then also from the PressMap barometer. And I believe now we have just about everything. Highlands would be good to have. We're not going to do a pressure scan, and I think we are missing the Highlands as an EVA biome as well. Or maybe not. I'm not going to spend too much time doing this because I can send a specialized craft to do this that will not, interfere with our deal. You can see we have a number. I do apologize for the launch in the dark. This is the... Basically, this is the, Oh, how are we inclined? There we go. I'm just going to do this real quick to figure out. I think we actually need more than one burn here. Yeah, we're going to need a burn on the other side of Kerbin, so I'm just going to circularize real quickly. Maybe not something that exaggerated, probably closer to 90. That is a very steep ascent there. 83 and something else. 93 versus 89. That's good enough for me. Let's just grab real quickly. Well, let's point towards our node. And let's get this guy going. We still, as you can see, have plenty of Delta V. In fact, we have way more than we need to. And the plan is going to be that we're going to put ourselves in a polar Minmus orbit. Because this guy, it is worth it to grab all of the biomes, of which I believe there are 9, maybe 8. Yeah. Something like that. So, we should watch out for the grasslands. For sure. And for that matter, we should also watch out for our burn time. While we are so stuck on the highlands is beyond me. But it works. And we will end up getting a rather nice deal out of this. So, we're about to be circular. A little bit eccentric, but then again, eccentricity is a virtue, so I'm not sure if that's such a bad deal. We are in a weird predicament now, though, to where we will very likely intercept the moon. Or intersect it, rather. Let's get this guy in as close as we can. We don't really need the free return trajectory. And in fact, we do need to be careful here, because we can end up in a very bad spot. Now, ideally, we want to get this as low as is reasonable. Maybe like 10k would be good. 26, I'll take. And I will get into position here and maybe grab some other science here. We should be at least over the water fairly soon. Minmus does always lead to some really odd trajectories, though. So it's going to be hard to tell. One thing we may wish to do is have a mid-course plane change where, considering our proximity to Minmus, we may wish to do something to where we are able to get into polar orbit very easily. Basically, the name of the game there is to oscillate between maybe 10 and 40, so we're able to quickly circle the planet while hitting both sorts of biomes. Well, let's get out of the highlands. We are now in grasslands, which is a good sign. And where is that? There is occasionally an issue to where, because of the way this thing is rotated, it's very difficult to get this data sometimes. If I can, maybe if I zoom in, it'll be easier to see. I put this so that the Kerbals would be able to reach it fairly easily. Okay, water is new here. So we want to wait for this thing to stabilize just a little bit. And this is going to be about a 3-minute burn. So it is worth, talking about some other things. We'll just take that data there. I'm not sure if we're going to get anything else out of this. If I had to guess, the answer is likely no. But it would be nice to get some Badlands going. Certainly, we will have to, given the number of biomes around Kerbin, we will have to have a dedicated mission. But the good thing is here is that we can extract several thousand science points, which would be good for us, because that will essentially mean that we're able to unlock most of the tech tree. And that probably means as well that I will want to start looking at mods that I can put in that'll make our science useful. Now, of course, we have the planning thing, and that's actually something that we might do, because what we lack the most of right now is money and science. And in fact, I think I'll do that. I will bolster our science before we launch the second craft. There's basically a way that we can trade off our reputation for our for science points or for money. And given our reputation gains that we're about to get, if we take a look at the reputation right now, well, it's probably going to tell us we have 0 reputation, because that's just the way it is. Although, what I can do is I can fulfill one of these contracts real quick and get an estimate. So we get a crew report. We've done this before. we extend our antenna and we transmit it, we have fulfilled a contract. And now we're almost at 100. So part of the reason I was late in recording this is it turns out that our local university had a game programming competition. Now I ended up really busy, so I did not end up completing it on time, but I threw it up on SourceForge. I'm going to continue development for it. It's a Halloween themed game. I'll at least leave it at that. Are we about to go over mountains? I sure hope so. Those are either mountains or highlands. But that means that because I was trying to get this thing going, that I did spend a little bit less time. In fact, these craft were ready to go for a while. I was just waiting for my mods to get updated, and most of them have been. Fire Spitter is the only one that does not seem to work. I think the toolbar mod, and really, they may work. The toolbar mod definitely seems to work, but the Fire Spitter, we don't really use it, so or at least we haven't yet, so maybe there will be some flexibility. I'll have to do some testing to see. But we are now about 2 minutes into our burn. We'll be completing that burn very shortly. And I'm going to leave some of the external carbon science. Mountains. There we go. If we weren't still burning, I would get out and get an EVA report. But we do need to pay attention to this because this thing does have a habit of not quite making the burn sometimes. It seems to miscalculate it. But you know, I figure, why don't we get this other mission out real quick at least? Yeah, we're still quite, oh, what's that abscess there? That needs to come down a fairly great deal. And we now have a moon intercept. Ooh, deserts as well. We can get that. But not before I get my abscess down to an appreciable amount. That, I think, is low enough. We want to be careful with this. Well, I think we lack an EVA report over the desert, so I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to grab as well this guy. And we'll get on out. And grab that gravioli data so that I don't completely forget about it. Because it turns out that's very easy to do. So there we go. We have half a year's worth of supplies at this point. Periapsis is a little bit low, but let's schedule this guy right here. We'll give us about a minute or so. That is... Well, that can't be right. 3 days. That is a very quick burn. Well, you know what? This concurrent mission, or this concurrent launch, may be an idea that we can get away from. One thing that I want to do, however, since we are so close and since it is going to happen very quickly, I mean, that is a very short encounter. And chances are we will be coming in really fast. I'm just going to go ahead and go on through here. So we now can at least collect this data. This wonderful gravioli data that will give us lots and lots of science. See, I was thinking that this would take way longer than it would. Although, you know what, we might as well get this thing. Well, we need to board for sure, because that could end up very badly, very quickly. I think we did that during the last episode. But I'm going to go to the Space Center, and I will launch that Lunar mission. We're not going to try to maximize gravioli data with respect to the Lunar mission, because that could turn out to be very foolish. But we have plant a flag on the moon, which is definitely worth getting if we're sending lunar data out there. And then we might as well send our lunar deal out as well. Now, I'm fairly certain that this monstrosity has more than enough delta V to get to the moon. And it still is nighttime, so we should be able to get there fairly easily. You can see there's a very tall payload up here. And that is no mistake. We are back to disposable rockets because we really plan to make a fair number of them. Or a fair amount of stuff off of this. But let's go ahead and get this guy situated for our orbit here. And because we don't really necessarily need too much in the way of our synchronization, I am just going to go ahead and get this guy up. Thrust to weight is fairly high on this. In fact, it's a lot higher than it probably needs to be. But as long as we make it through the atmosphere, really, as long as I pay attention like I'm supposed to be. I mean, we'll be okay, I think. We definitely do not want Bill here to end up in this weird situation to where he is unable to get out of the atmosphere because this thing will burn up if we're not careful. Might even be good from a practical standpoint for us to begin pitching over as much as we can, and we now have a very, very large side slip angle. Not the world's most efficient launch by any means, but we're maintaining inclination, which is important. And okay. That could have been very bad there. I'm not quite sure what happened. I guess we had ourselves a little staging malfunction. But we're out of the atmosphere, and I think we just lost that launch stage, that's all. That's not as bad of a deal as it could be. Thrust to weight ratio is actually quite high here, but we have a bit of a problem. Which is that we may not have enough fuel to get to where we want to be. I'm going to transfer this fuel in for the time being. Although in reality, with no docking ports, do we have... Why do we have fuel cross-feed enabled? This is highly bewildering to me. This could end up not going well for us, which means that we may end up having to scrub this landing. I'm going to do a free return trajectory on this, I believe. And maybe see if we have enough to... Well, if we can even just target the moon and get out there, I mean, I think that'll be okay. But we're going the complete wrong direction for that. So, we will just get this out of the atmosphere as soon as possible. And I will go for a free return trajectory. Given that we used a lot more fuel than we needed to get up, I think that that's prudent. 200 meters per second. That leaves us with a little over 1,000. And we can get to the moon with a little bit under 700. It's going to be touchy. So we may have trouble recovering that. That tends to imply to me that we want our deal here. Let's just see if there's anything new here on the surface. There's the shores, so yeah, I think we've gotten everything we can get in equatorial orbit. However, given our height, we have a temperature scan. 3 is gravity scan. Kerbin's water. It looks good to me. I mean, we will make plenty of money regardless. But I don't want this to become space debris. At worst, I want this to become something else. I want to recover this, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And there we go. We are in orbit. This guy needs to be cut down a lot. Now the question is going to be, what is the minimum we can do to get to the moon here? I'm thinking about 800 will do it. I don't think there will be enough in the way of fuel, however. Can we set this up in such a way where we will get a flyby? Maybe if we add a maneuver here. That might be doable. Where are we now? Oh, great. I just switched. to one of these relay satellites. Time to go back, but while we're at it, let us begin by checking our contracts, which we have nothing on. The tracking station it is. Really, as long as we get our thing going, as long as we get that engine out into a lunar trajectory, that'll be just fine by me. I don't know whether it's safe to land, unfortunately. And for that matter, I mean, we got plenty of food. I don't know what is up with that. My spacing on this vessel is a little bit bizarre. Now, where were we? That is fairly far out. New Carbon Periapsis is... Why does that keep happening? That is irritating me. Let's give it one more go. Certainly it's my glide pad that is causing this to happen. But if we can get out there, then we can do whatever it is that we please. My only concern is the amount of delta V it'll take. And I'm beginning to think, okay, do not... There we go, 77. 63. We were very narrowly passing the moon. We'll just do a flyby this mission, unless it does turn out that we have enough to land, which may actually be the case. We'll just have to see. We will NQ that, however. And the nice thing is that if we lower our periapsis enough, then what will end up happening, for us at least, is that this guy will be able to make a controlled re-entry. But enough of that. Let's point to our node and get this show on the road. And let's bring that up to figure out when that show is going to start. You know, while we're at it, why don't we? We already got the Highlands, or do we? Let's EVA and grab that, EVA and grab that science real quick to find out. Because what I'm thinking is that this is new to us. And I do kind of wish that I placed this in a more convenient location. Highlands, there we go. There can only be one. See, all of this does add up. And given that we have our Minmus mission going on here, then that'll be okay. Let's grab real quickly that data, as I believe what we got was high over the desert. And really, it's not going to hurt to get it twice. But we do want to get close in, whatever approach we're taking. And maybe we'll hit the shores pretty soon. Oh, wow, there was tundra. We will have to pay more attention, or I will rather. Oh. Shores, quickly grab the shores. We still are 5 minutes in. Getting the tundra would be nice, of course. And I believe that is probably everything that we can get on this pass, at least. So let's get ourselves in position, at least. As you can see, we are fairly loaded when it comes to parachutes. And let's get out to the moon. Now, mountains, I may be missing mountains. And we are going to pass over a mountain range, it looks like. Let's just... Oh, we do have duplicates, I see. Sound is broken for some reason. There we go. Maybe not the best issue here. But let's again grab this science and let us go on a science spree. because we now have high over Kerbin's water, which is really quite a good thing to have. Really, all of this is. The more of this science we can get, the better. And it's just a matter of getting over. Why am I under acceleration? Okay, stop that. So our final periapsis. It's going to be too low for re-entry. And I do not believe we have enough to get to land. Anywhere near enough to land. Ooh, no, 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 no. I guess that will give us a little bit of time to get in. Yeah, a flyby would seem to be the best option here. Give us a periapsis of 40. We'll do a skip re-entry. As at least it'll give us some time to collect some of this delicious science data. Did we grab some of the science? The answer, of course, is no. I do believe we have a duplicate of water. Although maybe not. I'm gonna grab water real quick. And see if it'll let me. Yeah, we did have water after all. But we have plenty of data, and that is worth something. And we are about to have... Now, how are we getting tundra? I mean, I'm hoping at this point that we'll just hit KSC. Highlands... Did we have it? I think we may have. And mountains we will have briefly, since we are over KSC at the moment. In fact, the degree to which we are over the KSC is somewhat, it looks like we're almost straight up above the KSC. But we do need to be paying attention here. And we need to not crash with, which, you know, we could be moving backwards, and I think that's actually what's happening here. Yeah, we're actually moving backwards, I believe. So we may have the opportunity to grab some unique biomes. Although I am not really concerned with that right now. We'll grab them on the way in. So there we are. We are in the moon's sphere of influence now. And now it is time to science spam like nobody else's business, because we do get 60 science out of this. And that can only be a good thing. Now, here's a question. If we take this guy here and we observe, or we take any fuel remaining and pump it in, will it be enough for a landing? Uh, the answer to that is no. Unfortunately. But I mean, there's some benefits to this, because we can grab our fair share of science, not the least of which is going to be testing this engine. That's going to be very important for us, as it turns out. And what we can do from there is we can go on through, wait for our biome to change to something maybe like, oh, I don't know, something other than the northwest crater. Basically, anywhere that we had not been would be good. Midlands, for instance, would be perfect. Although, we aren't going to get much out of our Midlands data, I fear. But we'll take the data. We should be leaving our sphere of influence soon. As we fly by. And I'm going to take this opportunity to grab what remains of this mystery goo here, as for the materials bay as well, because that is plenty of science that we want. And I'm actually going to get out and grab that, I think, just in case. Because you never really can be too sure about this thing. And for that matter, I'm hoping I put this in a way to where the gimbal lock does not work against me. We got some data here, which I believe we've already grabbed. And that's just in case we happen to lose our, well, really anything, just gonna warp past Periapsis here. We still have about an hour left. So let's take advantage of that. Highlands. That is a new biome. Well, at least it's new to me. And we shall soon maybe get one more. I mean, this has been worth it so far, because that means that we have fewer biomes that we have to deal with. East Crater is another one. If we come out here to the Eastern Crater and grab this, then, I mean, we will be making enough science off of this to where it is at least worth it. But with that having been said, I think we're reaching the end of our useful... Oh, Highland Craters. I probably just missed that. And I believe we're probably going to, unless we hit the Highland Craters somehow. Although that may be just a bog. I mean, there's certainly no going back on it now. But we are maybe out. I don't know what our sphere of influence is. Yeah. Okay, so let's come on through, spend the rest of this time, first of all, lowering our apoapsis to something reasonable. Maybe, I'm thinking maybe 50 is going to be a good place to start here. So I haven't, whoa, yeah, that is way too low. I haven't really tried lowering my orbit as such in this manner. We'll go 48. We'll grab this node here. All the fuel has been returned, fortunately. And we can basically use RCS to get this other guy down. I believe there is enough in the way of, at least in terms of, fuel for us to be able to use RCS here. Ideally, we wouldn't want to be concerned with that, but something tells me that the time on this is a little bit off. Is it me, or has this gotten easier? Or maybe I'm just a little bit more efficient than usual. Well, we have 4 minutes. I'm gonna coast through that fairly quickly. And the plan is to reach this high apsis of ours. And hope that we make it. Because this guy at least can get back home. And we won't have to carry around that bulky rocket. In fact, I may put this guy on a new rocket just for this purpose. Depending on how everything ends up going. But burn is in less than 8 seconds. So we will let that happen now. It's probably just going to be a quick burst. Ah, there we go. 44 is a little bit higher than I wanted, but I think that will be okay. I'm just going to take it as a given. That's actually really fortunate timing. I think I do want to take advantage of that. KSC will be way closer if we do it like this. Let's point retrograde at least. I'm going to use some of this time, or some of this fuel rather, when we reach periapsis. And significantly reduce my orbit, because it looks like this is a little bit more shallow than I wanted it to be. It's a lot more shallow. Well, we should be past the moon. Are we out of fuel at this point? Yeah, we are now doomed to have our orbit decay. Maybe that was not the most intelligent move on my part. But I'm going to assume, at least, that we have enough energy to get out of the atmosphere here. This guy we will recover at some other time. And I will use the RCS fuel at this point and figure out how to make the rest of this happen. So that should have lowered our periapsis a bit. Let's target the moon, and I think, well, you know what, we may not even need to. Let's just see how our fuel is going. If I can push this thing back to under 30k. And then it'll probably be good. And we still have a few hours left. So, how are we doing on fuel? And get this thing as low as we can. We'll be about an hour, I believe, in orbit. Oh, 35 minutes or so. I think that's it for the RCS fuel. I think we have completely exhausted it. This means electric. Oh no. We have no electric charge. But don't we have solar panels? Oh yeah, the solar panels are using up all the power, that's why. We're actually going to do something counterintuitive here. We're not going to fire retrograde, but instead we'll go prograde. So let's go down here, kick off as much as we can here, get as much force in so we can lower our apsis. And we are now ready to recover everything. So we'll actually end up really close to KSC, which is good in a way. I mean, it's I could think of worse things that might happen. This inflatable heat shield does work wonders because one of the things that it can do for us in particular is create a ton of drag. As you can see, we are already... Oh no, that is a very, very bad sign. Although we are under our threshold, I think. So actually, that's not as bad as it could have been. Considering that we're traveling under an appreciable speed of Mach. And I don't believe we have actually done anything with the deserts yet. Let me just run the barometer here. Looks like we'll be landing at the shores. Which will be just fine. I'm not gonna bother getting anything like an EVA report, I don't think. But now that we are under the atmosphere, I will grab that. And I will do some things like, well, you know, basic things like grab our stuff, our extended instruments, rather. That really we could have done at KSC too, if I was really thinking about it. But shoots are about to pop. What happened there? That is very depressing. Well, I suppose we will have to honor Bob in some other way. In the meantime, before we go, I just want to do one other thing. I'm thinking, this guy at least, if we lose anything else aside from that really awesome science data, which we can recover from, I think we at least want to land this guy. And I'm gonna do a dome landing here. We are very rapidly descending. And we do have plenty of braking power here. We just have to be careful with this guy right here, because he does have a nasty habit of wanting to do things rather unconventionally. Now, I'm not going to bother keeping the antenna out. I'm sure we've already broken the antenna off. But since we're going to be close by Kerbin, that'll probably be okay. Although we may have to make more than one pass here. Which could be a problem. So this is kind of technically space debris for now. I'm just going to let this guy fall back down, and maybe when we get over here we'll be properly oriented. Kerbin will rotate quite a deal, so we won't get everything back here. I mean, this mission was more or less doomed to fail. From the very start, it would seem. should be reaching Periapsis pretty soon. There we go. This is at least quite a deal less aggressive, and as we begin to lose more and more energy, then what I think will happen is that this guy will descend, and eventually we will lose, we'll be on the other side of the planet, unfortunately. Which is a shame, because that's a really expensive engine. I mean, it actually is one of the more expensive ones available to us. Although, then again, we may actually get close to KSC, which is going to be good. But the only issue being that now we may lose some parachutes because of our heating. And I am not liking the way that is going at all. Yeah, there goes all of our parachutes. So this mission, for all intents and purposes, has been a complete failure. As we severely misjudged the atmosphere. What a shame. I was kinda hoping it would go better, but since it hasn't, we will just wait for these little bits to explode. We have 5 hours to begin looking at the CCP-3, which will hopefully go better. We may try to go back to the moon at some point, but we do have a little bit of science that we can rely on at least. And for that, there's a number of things we can get. It's really a hard call between nukes and the stronger landing legs. I think the stronger landing legs are what we're going to go for. And for that matter, I might go for... well, I'll save the rest of it, I think. Anyway, this has been Lord Root, and until next time, I will see you later.